Welcome, everybody, to the February 23rd Administrative Committee meeting. To my right is Jim Boland, to my left is John Weber, and to his left is City Supervisor Gary Riedner, and I'm Dan Carscallon. First up on the agenda is the approval of the February 9th, 2015 minutes.
I would make a motion we accept those minutes.
I'm okay with them as well.
I'll have to abstain from voting since I was absent.
Okay, well, we'll consider them approved. Next up is a proposed amendment to Title IV, Chapters 3 and 11, regarding light manufacturing, and Mike Ray is going to present that to us. Good afternoon.
Afternoon. So just wanted to update the council on a amendment coming to City Council next Monday, March 2nd, for the amendment of Title IV, Chapters 3 and 11, and this is in regards to light manufacturing within the zoning code. And so within the code, we basically define two types of manufacturing: light manufacturing, which is the manufacturing, compounding, treatment, processing, assembling, packaging, or testing of goods and equipment. And we also have heavy manufacturing, which is the extraction, processing, or treatment of raw materials, or the manufacturing, compounding, treatment, processing, assembling, packaging, testing, handling, or storage of explosive or radioactive materials or products. So a lot heavier of an impact for the use. We're talking about light manufacturing today, and its current allowance is within the Research, Technology, and Office Zoning District is permitted use by right. Within the Motor Business Zone, it's a special use permit. Within the UMC District, it's a conditional use permit. And within the Industrial Zone, it's permitted by right. Looking at prior special use permits that had to go through the SUP process for light manufacturing and the types of uses that went through that process, we had welding, raft frames, throw ropes, Biketronics actually had to go through that process twice, once on North Almond and then second on Palouse River Drive. We also had fabrication of parts, tools, archery type use, woodworking shop, and as well as a gift seed theme, garden products and packages. And so all of these uses are conducted wholly within enclosed buildings, and there's really no nuisance, which is the special use permit process. Is really the intention of that process is to be able to mitigate any of the potential nuisances that may arise from a light manufacturing type business. And so we had taken a look at some other communities: Pullman, Lewiston, Post Falls, Boise, Coeur d'Alene, Spokane, how they regulate light manufacturing, and most had the nuisance language that you're intended to review as part of the special use permit process included within their definitions. And they also allowed light manufacturing by right in the majority of the motor business zoning districts. And so the proposed amendments that are before you next Monday will be to amend the definition of light manufacturing from the manufacturing, compounding, treatment, processing, assembling, packaging, or testing of goods or equipment, and add that nuisance language that would include that is primarily indoors and which does not present any adverse effect upon surrounding property from smoke, noise, vibration, dust, glare, air pollution, or water pollution. And we'd also move light manufacturing from a special use within the motor business zone to just an allowed use within that zone. So they wouldn't have to go through or an applicant wouldn't have to go through that special use permit process. We have the mitigation from the nuisances already included within the definition, and that's the intent of that. And we also include it within general business. We'd insert it there as a conditional use. So the use would be light manufacturing with specific consideration given to traffic and circulation. And the reason to add it as a conditional use under the general business zone is that typically general business zones fall on the periphery of the central business district, so there may be more of an issue with parking, circulation on the site. You also have some general business zones that are adjacent to residential neighborhoods, and so I think we want to be able to review those, or at least have the Board of Adjustment review those as part of a conditional use permit process. And so those are the crux of the changes, and you'll see that at the council meeting next Monday. And so staff's recommendation is just to forward the items for public hearing on the proposed amendments at the council's upcoming meeting, March 2nd. I'd certainly be able to answer any questions that you might have.
John?
Just a comment. The Planning and Zoning Commission went over this at length, more than one meeting, and the discussions, this is the result of the discussions. I think it has been well discussed, and the objectives have been achieved as far as trying to more closely defined or more clearly defined light manufacturing, what it is and where it's allowed and where it can be put in with a conditional use permit. That being the case, I'm all in favor of moving this on with a suggestion from this committee that we pass it.
Jim, you got anything?
I was on Planning and Zoning when we reviewed this, and I would heartily agree with what John said. I think it's a good improvement in the ordinance, and we should continue with it.
So, just for clarification, currently, it's allowed by right in RTO and industrial, right?
Correct.
And then this would make it by right in motor business.
Correct.
Now, and by conditional permit in the general business. And we didn't mention urban mixed commercial. Is it still going to be a conditional use?
Yeah,
in
we
that?
would just leave it as conditional use permit there, because it's similar to general business in that it's, the area located basically between downtown and the University of Idaho. And so we still have that area that's located on the periphery of the downtown where we want to be able to review some aspects.
So no special use permits will be left in this language.
And they're basically the same thing.
Right.
So conditional and special, same criteria, and so, yeah, it would just be conditional.
Okay. Yeah, I think that we'll go ahead and move this forward for approval, regular agenda, because it's
Actually,
so
public hearing.
It is a public
Yes.
hearing, yeah. So, all right. Thanks, Mike. We'll see you next Monday.
Thank you, Mike.
Next up is the Idaho Child Passenger Safety Program for the fiscal year of 2015. Elisa Anderson and David Duke are going to present that to us.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So today we're bringing forth a program that the police department has been working on since 2003 and has actually been the fiscal agent and the lead agency since 2011, and that is the Idaho Child Passenger Seat Safety Program. Officer Marie Miller has been the one that has really taken this program on and has worked very hard, and it's very important to our community, and she does a great job with that. As you can see from the staff report, we have several other agencies that she partners with, or the police department partners with under this program. However, they really like seeing us manage it for them. So here we are. We've brought this forth to you the last few years since we've started processing the grants on a regular basis in this manner. Basically, we're looking at doing the same type of program as we did last year, applying for $10,500, and the budget was outlined in the attachment. $9,000 of that will go to seats and other types of child safety amenities, and then there's $1,500 for education and training and outreach materials. The grant deadline came upon us very quickly. We had to get the application submitted. Marie went ahead and got that taken care of. And so today we're looking for your ratification, but I know that Chief Duke also has some information he'd like to share with you before we move forward.
Chief?
Yeah, we received notice of this grant 2 weeks ago from today, and it was a little short to get it before you all that afternoon. So the deadline was the 13th of February. Since it fit the same criteria as the last 4 years that we've applied, we thought we'd best submit it. The date that we will be notified if we receive the award is March 1st, but just wanted to go that our goals for this program continue to be to provide child safety seats to those low-income families within our community at a reduced cost or for free, and that we provide increased awareness and education on the proper use of restraints, because that's probably the biggest problem we have is the lack of education on what child should be in what seat and how the seat's actually equipped and secured in the car. Train new or recertify our technicians. Last year, we were able to train 8 new technicians and also certify an instructor to help do that. And then during our community outreach events, we do distribute educational material on that. But last year, we were able to buy 153 seats, and I've been told by Officer Miller that those seats have been distributed, so we're seeking funds to restock our supply for our upcoming community events. And that's all I have.
So our staff recommendation today is that you ratify the submittal of the application and then also approve us to accept the award when it comes in, which will be within the next few weeks, I anticipate.
Okay.
I would move to submit and ratify.
Absolutely. I think it goes without saying, if one kid is either kept healthy or kept alive in this program, it's been well worth it. So, all for it.
So a couple questions. We'd get rid of the bulk of these we distribute the bulk of these at the Newville Safety Fair?
We do, and we also do distribute it one-on-one when we set up appointments.
Okay. And what do we do with the old seats to make sure that they stay out of circulations, the ones that they deem unsafe?
We do destroy them.
Okay. So, and then they just get recycled or, as plastic
Correct.
or whatever. So.
Yes.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and move this forward since we're kind of on the back burn. Let's go ahead and put it on the consent and move forward.
Thank you.
And there is no match, so the city doesn't provide any additional matching
Yeah, that's
funds for it.
one of my favorite ways to get money.
Thank you.
Thanks. It looks like Elise is going to keep her seat warm and be here for the America's Best Communities Prize Campaign. And this is a partnership with the Pullman Moscow Airport. That's the wrong order,
Backwards,
isn't it?
huh?
Yeah, it's Moscow
On this
Pullman
side of the
Airport,
line, yeah.
And it looks like Tony Bean's going to join and help talk about this.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce the item. The America's Best Communities contest is a joint venture of DirecTV and Frontier Communications, and was brought, Dish Network, sorry. Got wrong advertising in there. At any rate, it is a program that was outlined in the materials that you have in front of you. The ultimate awards, if you're able to be successful, is an award of $1 to $3 million, and there is a laddering of interim awards that you can get up to that point. The deadline for submittal is the 25th of March. We've known about this since last fall. We've looked at different projects. Martin Urkelo, the regional manager for Frontier Communications, approached the airport board, who thought that it might be, Martin thought it might be well used as a way for the airport, the communities, to meet the match requirement for the FAA grant for the realignment of the runways at the airport. So that is what we've looked at and determined that we can proceed on that basis if the council wishes to. This morning, as Elisa will explain to you in a few minutes as we talk about the mechanics of this, one of the requirements is that the sponsorship of the application has to be a municipality, but the lead agency on it has to be a nonprofit organization. We presented this morning to Elisa and I and Tony presented to the Moscow Chamber of Commerce Executive Committee this morning, and they have agreed to present to the full board that they will be that lead nonprofit on it. With that, it kind of sets the stage for the improvements and what we're trying to do here, so I'll turn it over to Elisa to talk about the mechanics a little bit.
Okay. So it will basically be, the first step is a 10 to 12 question application, and we'll be focusing on a regional aspect with the airport as it being a regional airport, and we'll be looking at the economic benefits to both sides. So it's really a collaborative project. We'll be taking a look at the impacts on both sides of the border, and really not splitting it up. It's, we're looking at our region and how we can benefit. Job creation is a key factor in this, and economics. If you're chosen through the process, the first 50, or if you're chosen as one of the 50 finalists, you can receive $35,000, and they require a $15,000 match with that. I think we've probably already have that match in the form of other work we're doing with our consultants right now and some other things. So
Not necessarily cash, just...
They didn't define it very clearly in the application, but I think that the work that we're probably doing with the consultant that's already on board and some of the things that have already happened, we should be fine. But Tony had spoke at the airport.
Yeah, it's all, that first part of it is a lot of public relations campaign. We've done a lot of that already. So we had the public forums both in Pullman and in Moscow over an extensive amount of time going through the environmental process. And we do have a public relations firm, Decettle Heggie, out of Spokane, that did a communications plan for the airport board last year that is on the consultant team now that we can utilize to do a lot of the PR work to start that first round.
And so, of course, before we accept any award, we would carefully look at the documents of that award before moving forward and to make sure that we're capable of meeting all the requirements. Out of the 50 chosen, then they move on to 15 semifinalists. And if you're one of those 15, you're chosen to do a presentation at a summit. But what you do in between the 50 and the 15 is you have 11 months to write a community revitalization plan, and ours would be a regional revitalization plan with the impacts of the airport and the businesses that use it and the universities and those types of things. So they give you the time to write that plan, and then when you move forward to a 15 of the final groups that are selected, you present that plan. And then you have an opportunity to move forward as 8 finalists, and each one of those 8 receive $100,000. And
Is there a match with that, or just 100? Okay.
the only thing documented is the $15,000 to match your revitalization plan work.
Okay.
And so then between April of 2016 and 2017, you move forward with implementing your revitalization plan. And then they go to a staging process of a first, second, and third place winner, and that's $1 million, $2 million, and $3 million. So it's a 3-year project, basically, 2.5 from where we're at right now. 2 years, actually, I guess.
Yeah, and it fits with what we're doing with the runway. At that point in time, between 15, 16, and 17, 16 and 17, we're going to be doing a lot of earthwork, and 17, we're going to be starting actually building that runway, so it all moves in conjunction with what the program is currently.
And when I say 3 years, if you win the $3 million, you do have some requirements to do the next year, and that's, implementation and continuing to do some PR events and those types of things, so it lasts.
Gary?
A couple of things I wanted to hit on is that this is truly a joint project. Elisa, as you know, has been running grants for us for 8 years now, quite a long time, and has had extraordinary success in joint partnerships. The Brownfield Assessment Grant was a joint partnership with the URA in Latah County. The ITC, the Intermodal Transit Center, was a Tiger II grant through the FTA that we received in conjunction with the University of Idaho, our partnership with them. So this is really a pretty fertile ground, and it's something that you don't see across the nation. 2 states, 2 cities, 2 universities, 2 counties cooperating on something with as important as an airport. As Tony has told us, there are 19,000 cities and towns in the United States, and only 500 and some odd of them have commercial airports. So it's very important to our economy that we retain this one as long as we can. We have it's of a great economic benefit to us. It is one of 7 commercial service airports recognized by the Idaho Department of Aeronautics, which is a subsidiary of ITD. So that's something, even though it is located in Washington, it is designated an Idaho airport, and one of only 7 that have commercial air service. Secondly, we want to talk about the project just a little bit, although you're well acquainted with it. It's an $89 million project at this point. It has an 8.125% match to the FAA grant, so our participation with our partners will be somewhere around between 7 and 9.4 million.
Yeah.
And the city of Moscow, the first to step up to the plate and commit $2.5 million over 5 years. City of Pullman has indicated that they are willing to make that same commitment. We're looking at participation from both universities, counties, port, and perhaps some private involvement as well. So it's going to be truly a region-wide project. And it's one that, in this situation, the city has, as I said, a great grants manager, good support staff with the Chamber of Commerce assisting us. We think we can put a viable application together, and we're ready to do that. Tony has a good relationship with Mead and Hunt. They've done a lot of the preliminary work already. We have a lot of the economic work that will go into Elisa's application for this grant, or this contest. So we seem to have everything in place at this point. It seems to make good sense. If we can get that, if we perhaps able to get the $3 million, it would certainly help our local economies, and we think we've got a good shot.
Gary, if, let's say, the best possible scenario happens and we get the $3 million, then is that prorated back to all the participants as part of the match, or is this going to be additional funds that we put into the project, or?
Well, that's a great circumstance we'd like to have a problem with when it comes up. As Tony will no doubt tell you, the airport has other needs besides just runways. There's a terminal that needs to be upgraded and some other improvements that need to be made. So we're trying to approach this. The airport's trying to approach this systematically. That's a great problem to have if we get that far, Jim, but I'm not sure how it would be addressed.
But it wouldn't have to be applied to the original 89 match. If we get this, we can put it forward towards a terminal or other things.
Yeah, it's not a government grant. It's a contest by a couple of private industries. So it's essentially whatever they will allow you to use it for.
And we're trying to write the parameters for the grant as broad as we can, so when those needs come up, we can be able to be flexible as we can be to meet them.
John?
I'm all for it.
Yeah, like I said before, I mean, we got to give some money to get some in this case, but
We've already given it.
yeah, it sounds
Haven't
like
we?
we've already got to that point. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say, as I sure hope the Pullman gets on board with their part of it. It sounds like they're moving in the positive direction as far as the initial part. But if we can take the lead on this, we seem to have the right people for the job. So I say we go ahead and move forward.
And Pullman, the Mayor Moscow, of course, Mayor Lambert and Mayor Johnson from Pullman are all in favor of this, as is the airport board. So we don't expect there's any...
Chair and the co-chair.
The chair and the co-chair, and I think Paul Kimmel's still in the audience, and he, of course, is an airport board member as well. Hopefully here to lend his support to this. So Pullman and the Moscow, or the Pullman Chamber, will assist as well. We expect to get help from everyone, and everyone will shoulder a little bit of the burden. We just have the personnel able to put it together.
Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and move forward. Consent, all right with this one?
That would.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I think that gets us through our regular agenda. So, Gary, you have a report for us.
I do. One of the things that we've been talking about over the past several years, and certainly within the past year, has been the policy for street closures on Main Street, street closures throughout the city, as a matter of fact. So I've asked staff to take a look at some of the more popular street closures that we're asked about every year. The main one that I'm speaking about is Main Street. We have several requests every year to close Main Street. Trinity Fest, as you know, has closed Main Street a couple of years. Last year, Bootsers has requested a street closure for a portion of Main Street north of 3rd. On a couple of occasions, the Art Walk, the street's closed. Farmers Market, every Saturday, the street's closed for 26, 28 weeks. The Vandaltown Block Party that was sponsored by the city, chamber, and the university last fall also closed the street. So there are issues that come with closing a street, and those have to do with, it is public right-of-way, and the council really by resolution needs to let us know, staff know, and let the public know under what circumstances the streets can be closed. Taking the liberty of the city attorney and fire department, police department, public works have been looking at this, like I said, for the last couple of years on various and different issues. So I've asked Les McDonald, our public works director, to take a look at some of the issues for street closure and some of the things that we would be taking a look at. So, Rod, you want to pass those out? Thank you. And I don't know if I have enough for everyone, but essentially these are the issues that the public works guys, police, so on and so forth, as far as just general closures. And, of course, what they want is consistency so that everybody knows what the rules are. Additionally, closures for public purposes by the city are not regulated by the street closure policy. The city...
We do as we want.
Yeah, the city retains the right, as most governments do, to close their own facilities for purposes that they have.
Which that counts the farmer's market.
Absolutely. And this policy would not affect the farmer's market per se. If there were other things, Art Walk is a city-sponsored function, the Vandaltown Block Party, city-sponsored function. But there may be a time when any or all of those functions may be privatized, or someone may want to, as Bootzer's has, may want to close the street for a commercial purpose or to have a soiree of their own. In that case, we need the authority of the council to say, yes, that's going to be allowed, or no, it's not. Some of you may even have attended the Vandaltown Block Party and a couple of Bootzer's, or at least one of Bootzer's other closures last year. So one of the things that we want to look at is what type of enforcement procedures, what things will be allowed in the public right-of-way, will there be a charge for it, and if there is, how much. Insurance, it's a public right-of-way. If activities are going to go on in the public right-of-way, typically governments require an insurance requirement. If there is, for instance, you'll have bounce houses and those sorts of things. If you're having those on asphalt, chances are you probably ought to have some casualty or personal injury insurance. Noise ordinance, always the big issue. We have to have fairly strict adherence to the noise ordinance. We do have residents living downtown, so that's one of the things that we're looking at as well. The conflicting right-of-way uses, we have a fairly restrictive downtown in that the east-west movement between Main and Jackson, very few points of travel. 2nd Street, or is it 3rd, excuse me? Yeah.
1st and 3rd.
1st, 3rd, and 6th are your only streets. So you want to make sure that you try not to impede traffic as much as you can. You also have the state highway in the middle of that, 3rd Street, so surrounded by both Jackson and Washington. And then consistency of information. Where does someone go to find this sort of thing out? So these are things that we're moving forward right now. This is a report. It's not an action item. One of the things that we also wanted to look at was a discussion that we had a couple of years ago about whether or not the city would allow, do that again, if the city would allow limited consumption of beer and alcohol, or beer and wine, in the public right-of-way, similar to, if you've ever been to Boise with their Alive After 5 party that they have, I think it's every Wednesday or Thursday night in Boise, in the 8th Street right-of-way and around the Grove. Sandpoint has similar street parties, I guess you'd call them, up there. And it's not uncommon throughout the state of Idaho to do that. A lot of small towns have parades where they close Main Street, and
They just do it.
Yeah, they probably. They are not blessed with the state highway going through their town, probably. But one of the things that we talked about at one point is several years ago, we had a strict prohibition of alcohol consumption in public parks. Several years ago, Rendezvous came forward and some other folks came forward and said, hey, and nobody sitting behind this table was one of those people who asked either, unless it was Jim Boland. But the idea is that Rendezvous, the situation was that people were essentially bringing wine and beer to the concerts anyway. It would make it safer if it was in a regulated environment, allow another fundraising opportunity for the venue, so on and so forth. Council at that time debated it. It took a couple of years. Then they decided, okay, if we can put enough controls on this, we'll go ahead and consider it. So what we did is we came up with the idea that it would be, if the council wanted it to, it would be on a case-by-case basis, that no one would get any sort of blanket. You can just come in, and if you can convince the Parks and Rec director that you want to have it, you can have it. Every time there's alcohol legally within one of our parks, it is done so with a specific resolution which is brought to the council. Council then reviews it, determines if the controls are fine, and we also have the alcohol beverage code that we have to deal with, and the police and the city attorney will tell you that there needs to be restrictive areas. You can't just allow folks free reign in and out, mainly because you can't control the alcoholic beverage, and you want to make sure that those who aren't supposed to drink, underage folks, would have access to alcohol, which is one of the big taboos under the alcohol beverage code. So when you see those, and you see those every year, Rendezvous will bring theirs through in a few weeks, I'm sure, where it's a designated spot, there are controls. They either have private security if the council allows that, or they are forced to hire police officers to do that, whatever the council feels they need to do. Council is not obligated to issue a resolution. If the council decides it's not something that they want to risk, then they just do not do it. So, one of the other things we wanted to do here was we've had requests for businesses, folks who wanted to have a downtown party, street closure, concert, whatever you want to call it, might want to have a beer garden type venue. What would that look like? Is the council even interested in doing that? We have an open container law now that says you can't have alcoholic beverages open on a public right-of-way, which all the streets are. The one exception, and it's a hybrid, is Friendship Square, which is still 4th Street right-of-way, but it's also a city park. So the city can allow it to occur in there pursuant to a resolution. This proposed ordinance draft, and it's just in its very formative stages, Rod drafted this and gave it to me. It is a start to determine, it follows the same type process that we do for parks. So if the council wants to consider that, we've limited it to the central business district. And the reason for that is we don't want folks all over town closing residential streets. Number one, they can't be controlled.
If they hire cops.
Unless they hire cops. So we wanted to limit it for the public purpose of downtown. So that's what you have before you today. Not really looking for direction at this point. Council asked us to take a look at this. We're doing so. We'll continue to develop it. May have it ready in 2 weeks. If not, it'll be the meeting after that. I know that Boosters is
Chomping at the bit.
Chomping at the bit. They've got they have one street closure that they've asked for, and they'd like to know what the rules are prior to that. So that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I think that we saw some pretty good success with the Vandaltown party, so if we could continue with things like that. I know that I've talked to some business owners downtown, and one told me he'd like to do this at least once a month, if not once a week. You know, that he thinks that'd be great. So if we can figure out a way to make things work and everybody behaves themselves, I don't see a problem with it.
Yeah, it's everybody behaving themselves. I mean, the situation where there was no alcohol allowed in parks as I remember how that evolved, it was allowed years ago, and because things got out of hand, it got shut down in all parks at all the time, and it was difficult to get it back. So when people ruin it for everybody, it's hard for everybody to get their. So it's very important that it be done in a controlled way, and it starts out small and expands. Rendezvous in the Park started that way. It started out with the smallest beer garden you can imagine, maybe 10 people could fit in there, and it was very heavily controlled, and because their behavior was good, it expanded to the fenced venue. So I don't see why we can't work in a similar fashion on this for downtown events.
Tom?
Yeah, I'm fully in favor of this. I'm usually in favor of anything that helps promote business and a little vitality downtown and getting people out. I've often wondered, though, people want to live downtown, and they give all of the reasons they want to live downtown, and as soon as they move in, they say, okay, shut everything off at 9. I want to go to bed. And I just find that a little bit strange as far as...
I like the vitality until I get tired.
That's right, and I get tired earlier and earlier.
When I would say, at planning and zoning, we've heard from people that live adjacent to downtown businesses that when there are outdoor events going on that generate some noise, they'll be annoyed by that somewhat. So, that's certainly a factor we got to consider. But as long as you keep it within the parameters of.
Well, and that's usually what we do if there's a band downtown. It needs to shut down at a certain time, and the noise variance that they get, or exemption from the noise ordinance, will state when it needs to be shut down. So again, like you say, if we can do it within the parameters that it makes it enjoyable, but still has some reasonable sideboards on it, then it should be something we should be able to do.
Frequency is going to be an issue.
Absolutely.
If you have, once a month it annoys somebody for an hour, that's quite a bit different than annoying a bunch of people every day.
Yeah.
So frequency is going to have something to do with it.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Dan. You brought up a point about the block party that we had at the university in downtown, and I think it went extremely well. One of the things I wanted to point out, and Jim, you said this, and Gary brought up that, there's a noise ordinance and we shut the music down at a certain time. What I like to do is all those people within a couple of blocks is invite them down to have some fun with us, because that's what it's all about. It's about a town and gown relationship where we're getting everybody together. And I like the comment that John said about folks who like to live downtown, and then they want to go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. Well, come live in a neighborhood there's a little action downtown, and guess what? It should be that way. This is a college town, for crying out loud. And I wanted to make a comment about the Rendezvous in the Park, too, Jim, because I was on council back in the day when it was brought forth, and we had, and as well as John, there was some heartburn originally over it, and the folks at Rendezvous in the Park did an absolute excellent job of policing it. And I've been to a number of those, and it's a wonderful event. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I agree with you, Bill. I think that the people that put these on in this community, in this community, are well aware of the community and are not doing this in order to have a Sturgis, which might be kind of fun, maybe not. But they're looking to have something that is good for the entire community to enjoy, and if that includes having a couple of beers or a glass of wine, that's fine. And I totally agree with that.
Okay, so I guess we'll let you guys massage your magic on this and see it back in a couple of weeks, and then maybe council after that.
Yeah, we'll continue to bring that forward and seek direction. I know Pat Greenfield's here from Bootsers, if she would like to say something, or you'd like her to. I don't know
She can if she wants. I think
you need to come forward if you're going to, Pat.
I'm trying to think if I have anything to say right now.
I think this sounds like they're listening, so.
Okay.
And they're smiling, so we must be going in the right direction, so.
No torches or pitch.
Yeah.
Okay, we will bring it back to you and proceed.
Got anything else for us this afternoon?
No, sir.
All right, we'll consider ourselves adjourned. Thanks,
Thank you very
everybody.
much.